Aloha! My name is Brian Kessler, and I am the owner of the CPA Guide.com. This is a podcast for anyone looking to study for the CPA exam or any other certifications in your field, and also for anyone looking for career advice on how to get a job in corporate America. This is my first podcast, so I want to go over the game plan, give you an introduction over who I am, and why you should even consider listening to this podcast. So let's get to it.
The CPA Guide.
The CPA Guide.com.
Let's learn how to dominate
the
CPA exam together. And here is your host and CPA Guide, Brian Kessler. Because if he can pass the CPA exam, anyone can.
All right. Welcome to episode 1 of the CPA Guide Podcast. As a successful CPA exam candidate, I know all about the challenges of working full-time, studying, and trying to juggle a family and social life all at the same time. The goal of this podcast is to share how I overcame these struggles and host interviews with other successful people similar to yourself and learn how they have done the same. If you are thinking about or are currently studying to become a CPA or looking to obtain any certification in your field, whether you are in accounting, finance, looking to practice law, or even in the medical field, then you've come to the right place. Many of you have been asking when I was going to be starting a podcast, and I just want to thank you for your patience. And I really appreciate that you're here today, whether you are listening on your commute, working out in a gym, or even while you're at work. Many of you know me as the guy who passed the CPA exam and set up a blog about how I did it and do some goofy video reviews of all the top CPA review courses. I've been wanting to do a podcast now for almost 2 years, and I really want this podcast to be a natural extension of all my blogs, and I want it to be applicable to a more general audience of anyone who's trying to obtain a professional certification in any field of work. I truly believe that to obtain any certification, you need to put in hard work and invest in yourself up front so that you can dominate whatever exam you're trying to take. If you think about it, obtaining a certification is very much like passive income. You have to put in a ton of time and money up front, but after you pass, the benefits will continue to pay off for your entire career, long after you've given up looking at all your notes and study materials. So I want to go over why I want to add a podcast to my CPA Guide brand and what it's going to mean for you. So my first reason, it is a selfish reason. I need to get better at public speaking. I'm a typical introvert accountant, and honestly, microphones kind of scare me and make me a little nervous. So this is a completely uncut version of me talking, and my mistakes, they're going to be painfully obvious to myself, and hopefully they won't be too obvious to you, but it's going to be a great motivation for me to keep improving as I continue recording episodes for this podcast. So my hope is that you can keep listening over the next few episodes and you'll see a vast improvement in my speaking skills, and it will seem flawless. So please, I hope you can stick it out with me for this crazy ride. All right, so obviously the number one reason I want to start this podcast is to help you advance your career by showing you my tips and tricks for how I was able to pass the CPA exam, which is one of the most difficult certifications to attain, in my opinion. I also want to show you that failure is okay, but only as long as you learn from your mistakes and can make the necessary changes to improve yourself. I'm just an average guy with a very big schedule like you, and I want to show you that it is possible to achieve anything as long as you put your mind to it and make the appropriate sacrifices. So this episode is going to be a bit different than a typical podcast episode, just because I want to give you an introduction of what to expect from this podcast and give you more background about who I am. So let's get started. So many of you are probably trying to decide whether you really want to spend the time and money to become certified or licensed in your field. To help put things in perspective for you, I really want to give you an example for why I think it is now more than ever crucial that you become certified in your field. So take the CPA exam, for example. To me, there are 800,000 reasons for you to want to pass a CPA exam. The average CPA makes $20,000 more than a non-CPA per year. So if you obtain your CPA as a 25-year-old and retire at the age of 65, That is $800,000 more in salary you will make over your entire career compared to a non-CPA. All right, so I have you all jazzed up about the thought of becoming a millionaire by the time you retire. How is this podcast going to help you attain this? So my goal with this podcast is to lay out in great detail the mistakes I made while sitting for the CPA exam and the lessons I learned. I hope that you can then take this knowledge and apply it to whatever professional certification you are trying to obtain, whether it be the CPA exam or any other certification. So this will not only allow you to jump into your exam process with a head start, but will hopefully eliminate any surprises that you would have otherwise experienced and give you some study tactics to use. So most of you obviously don't know my personal background. For the next couple minutes, I want to give you my personal story so you can better understand who I am and where I'm coming from and why I'm an authority in this particular field. I graduated with a master's in auditing in August of 2008. I was a fairly average accountant and graduated with, I believe it was around a 3.75 GPA. I did an internship and received a full-time offer from a regional accounting firm called BKD. And being the typical millennial, I didn't really understand the concept that you have to work harder than you have ever worked if you want to succeed in business. So I started lackadaisically studying for the CPA exam, and the reason I did this was because all my friends around me, they were sitting for the CPA exam, and they seemed to have no trouble passing it the first time through. Well, I'm not like other people. I have to study twice as hard as everyone else to get the same results. So I took the first two sections, and I failed both of them within 3 to 5 points, which for any of you taking the CPA exam know how excruciatingly close that score is. Well, once I started working full time, things still did not get any better for me. I took the next two sections and failed them both within 4 to 8 points. So to make matters worse, I got through my first busy season and there was a 20% layoff at the firm due to the financial crisis that hit in September of 2008. The firm lost a ton of business, and obviously they had overhired and didn't need all the employees because of the loss of work. So I was 2 of 8 that was laid off in my start class. And I can guarantee the primary reason being that the 2 of us that were laid off had not yet passed the CPA exam. So if you get one thing out of my podcast today, I hope that it is this. Not getting certified in today's job market is risky business. Getting a certification is one of the best ways to recession-proof your career. So to use myself as an example, I fully understand why I was laid off. My peers were already licensed CPAs and were bringing that value to the firm. If I were a partner, it would be an easy decision on who to decide to lay off if it was between a CPA and a non-CPA. So honestly, becoming a CPA truly separates the men and women from the boys and the girls. And I am living proof of this. So not only did I have 0 parts of the CPA exam passed, I now had no job. Things were looking terribly hopeless for me. So when I got home that day honestly, it was the worst day of my life. I really didn't know what I was going to do. I only received 2.5 months of unemployment insurance, and I had enough money saved up to maybe pay my bills for about 2 to 3 months after that. So the clock was immediately ticking for me. So over the next couple days, I sat down and began to ponder my life plan and figure out how in the world I was going to get out of this mess. In my next episode, I'm going to go into great detail about this plan and all the steps that I took to figure it out. But to suffice it to say, for now, I was able to turn a switch on in my head that turned me into the most motivated person I have ever been. So stay tuned for next time, and I'll share exactly step by step how I did this. All right, so back to my story. Instead of giving up, I spent the next 2 months investing in my future. So investing in my future meant I was working between 60 and 70 hours a week without pay, focusing solely on studying for the CPA exam and finding a new job. So not only did this investment in myself pay off, I also met my future wife during this time, which, funny story, one of her first questions of me was, "So Brian, what do you do for a living?" Well, obviously she loves me for my money. All right, sorry, corny joke. But I am so glad that she stuck with me because she was a huge support to me while I was taking the exam and looking for a job at the same time. And in the future, I really want to delve into this topic a lot more and explain to you how to explain to your significant other what you're going through as you study for your certification and things that they can do to help support you. So in the 2 months I was unemployed, I knocked out 2 sections of the CPA exam back to back. And then I was able to attain a private accounting job at a commercial real estate company called Cassie Turley, thanks to the help of the network of connections I had made in college through Beta Alpha Psi. I did receive a big pay cut, however, because the position did not require a CPA. But still, things were starting to look up for me, and I ended up taking a couple months off of studying for the CPA exam to adapt to the new job. And I was extremely lucky to have a fantastic manager who really helped me connect what I learned in college to my real life job, which in turn helped me study for the CPA exam. So I started studying again as hard as I possibly could, and then I passed the last 2 parts in August of 2011, just a couple weeks before my 18-month expiration window hit. And that would have meant that I would have lost the first 2 sections that I had passed. The 2.5-year struggle was finally over for me. Unfortunately, my current position, since it did not require a CPA, I wasn't able to negotiate a raise of any amount, even though I was a CPA. So I was very disappointed because I love my job, I love my coworkers at the time. However, I knew that if I really wanted to advance in my career, I would have to go elsewhere. So I immediately started looking for a new job, and again, through another connection in my accounting network, I was able to receive an offer from PwC, one of the big 4 accounting firms, as an experienced associate. And the best part of this new position was that I received a raise of over $14,000. And then by the following year, it would become $18,000. So like I said at the start, becoming professionally certified in your field may seem like a huge money and time investment up front, but it will make your position more recession-proof and the payoff will stay with you for the rest of your career. My story shows that this is truly possible, even for average accountants. All right, so I want to end with a quote from someone much smarter than me. His name is Steve Jobs, the late CEO of Apple Computer. This quote is taken from his commencement speech at Stanford University, and I quote, "In life, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down, and it has made all the difference in my life." End quote. I can't tell you how much this quote from Steve Jobs inspired me the first time I heard it while I was studying for the CPA exam. I knew that getting fired and failing the CPA exam multiple times was some of those crucial dots in my life, and it was up to me to determine the outcome. Thankfully, I received tons of support from my family and friends and was able to turn the worst day of my life into the turning point into something amazing. So I want to leave you with my own version of this quote that I hope will connect better with you personally. In life, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. You have to trust that your dots will somehow connect in your future, even if those dots are failing a certification exam a few times or even losing your job. Whatever you do, don't lose faith in yourself. Thanks so much for listening to my first ever podcast episode. I truly hope that you'll be able to use this podcast to help establish one of the biggest connecting dots in your life. I know that this is possible because one of the biggest turning points in my life was passing the CPA exam. Believe me, no matter what certification you may be taking, you are in for a wild ride, and I really can't wait to see where it takes us. Thanks again for sticking with me. If you feel that this podcast has added value to your study preparation or your career, all I ask in return is that you log into iTunes and leave me a fair rating, and then share this podcast with your colleagues and peers. I am always open to suggestions and critiques, so please email me at brian.kessler@thecpaguide.com, and I promise to get back to you, or you can connect with me on my blog at www.thecpaguide.com or on Facebook, which is facebook.com/thecpaguide, or on Twitter, which is twitter.com/thecpaguide. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope that you can tune in for episode 2 very soon.
If you want more of the CPA Guide Podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes, or you can go to thecpaguide.com for even more great content about how to pass the CPA exam.
This podcast is for general advice only. It should not be construed as accounting, legal, or any other professional advice. Your particular situation is fact-dependent, and you are recommended to seek the help of a competent professional.